Okay, it's 7:35. This is the Town of Ossining Planning Board meeting for January 20th, 2021. Let's go around the screen and introduce ourselves. Sandy?
Sandy Anelli, Secretary.
Jim?
Jim Bacinas, Planning Board Member.
Kathy?
Kathy Zalanthis, Planning Board Attorney.
Valerie?
Valerie Menastra, Planning Board Planner.
My screen moved around, so I think Carolyn was next.
Carolyn Stevens, Planning Board Member.
Gareth?
Gareth Huffam, Planning Board Member.
Dan?
Nancy Arcia, Consulting Engineer of the Planning Board.
Did I miss anybody?
Me,
No, right? Okay.
Donna.
Oh, sorry, Donna?
I won't take it personal. Donna Sherritt, Planning Board Member.
Okay, yeah, the screen suddenly moved. I think when Dan popped in, and then everybody got shuffled. And I was like, I lost track of who I was talking to. And I'm Ching-Hua Chin. I'm the chair. Before we start, let me just go through a quick show of hands from the public, if anybody's there, just so that we know what matters that you are interested in. How many people here are for the Rinaldi subdivision on 39 Stormytown Road? A rough count, Sandy. You don't have to be exact.
I see two hands up.
Okay. How many people here for the Borrego Solar St. Augustine Church property site plan review?
So far is about 5 or 6.
Okay. How many here for the Park Knolls residential development on 87 Hawks Avenue?
There's also about 5 or 6.
Okay. How many people are here for the Sidon application, 49 Croton Dam Road, architectural review?
There's 1.
Okay. And how many people here for the River Knoll Stony Lodge property on 40 Croton Dam Road on a preliminary layout plan?
No, I'm here, Glenn.
There's 12 in the audience.
Okay. All right. Just so the public's aware, the River Knoll matter is not a public hearing. So tonight, we're not actually going to be taking any public comments, but we welcome, of course, the public to be attending and listening to the presentation so that any subsequent comments, we are going to have a public hearing on this sooner or later. And that way, if you attend and watch this either now or on the tape version, you'll have a better chance to actually submit something in writing or actually later on give a comment at another public hearing. I would really advise a written submission because that makes it more efficient, especially if there's a lot of comments to be made, if there are a lot of comments to be made. It just makes it streamline a process for us a lot more, for us to be able to consider all the issues from the public. Okay, but be aware that the River Knoll matter is not a public hearing today, so that we have no need for a public comment at this time, but we really do want the public to be paying attention to that presentation so that everybody has a full understanding of what the applicant is actually proposing on that property. Another matter is that since these are all the other ones are public hearings, we want to be able to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak if they're interested in speaking. Please limit your initial comments to at least initial comments or question to about 2 minutes, so that everybody gets a chance to speak. And also, of course, we don't have to stay here all night listening to the issues over and over again. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is 39 Stormytown Road. I understand that they've asked for an adjournment. Is that correct?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Does the board have any objection to that, or would anybody make a motion to put it on to? Do they have a date that they want to move it to? Sandy?
I would think they would go to February 3rd.
Okay. Can I have a motion to that effect to adjourn it until February 3rd?
So move.
Thank you,
Second.
Carolyn.
Okay.
Who seconds?
Jim,
Jim? Okay, Jim seconds. Donna, how do you vote?
Yes.
Gareth, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, Jim, how do you vote?
yes.
Carolyn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, I agree as well. Just to make sure, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this matter?
There are 3 people with their hand up. The first one, her name is Heidi.
Okay.
Heidi?
Heidi, would you like to?
Heidi's muted.
Okay. Why don't we let Heidi, I mean, you understand that the applicant is asking for adjournment on this matter, so at this time, there's not going to be a presentation, but what does Heidi wish to say or ask?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. Anybody else has it hands raised?
Oh, Heidi had her hand up. That's why I thought she wanted to say something. NW Pool? I think that's Marilyn from the EAC.
That is Marilyn.
Hi, Marilyn.
Something happened.
Okay.
All right, someone by the name of Don? Don?
Hello? Yes, hello, you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Donald Lutzig. I am the applicant. I just want to thank you guys for your time and say sorry for the last minute. We had some issues with our professional team. We're working them out now. We want to come back when we're fully prepared and answered all you guys' questions satisfactory. So February 3rd will be fine. I, again, apologize for the last minute. I do appreciate your time, and I recognize most of you guys are volunteers. So I apologize again for the last minute. We will be prepared for the next meeting. We've made some changes internally to allow that to happen. And again, we appreciate your time, and we want to come back with a fully prepared presentation for you to try to get this moving forward in the right direction.
Not a problem.
Very good. Okay, we'll see you in February then.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Take
Okay,
care.
the next item on the agenda is the Borrego Solar St. Augustine Church property application for 31 North Highland Avenue, battery storage system, site plan review. The applicant here?
Hello, yes,
Good
applicant is here.
Good evening. Valerie, what's our status at this point for this?
Tonight is a public hearing on the matter.
Oh, okay, right. So, let's see, there were members of the public here. So, would the applicant like to go over a quick review over what they wanted, what this application's about?
Sure. This is a 5 megawatt battery storage project. The project is set at the St. Augustine's Church parcel off of Route 9A, adjacent to the Hudson River. There is a 7-foot fence tucked into the back of the site that is surrounded by landscaping now, which we've worked out with the church and with the planning board to be a local vegetation. There is a 20-foot access road, which has been reviewed and agreed upon with the fire department. And there's also an interconnection at Route 9A into the existing utility lines, which is where the battery storage just feeds back into the grid at peak times, charges up at non-peak times, and then it feeds back into the grid at peak times via some utility poles on the east side of the site. The access driveway does come off, share the same driveway as Mystic Point. We have coordinated with Bob Margolis from Mystic Point to review the existing easements which are in place between the church and Mystic Point, and we've had our lawyers look into it, And our lawyers agree that the only requirements that would be, we'd need to follow would be to return the access drive or return the shared driveway to its original state after construction, which we obviously would do. And there really wouldn't be a ton of construction vehicles, and they would be taking that immediate right into the church property. But yes, we would bring that back to the existing status. The construction would take about, we expect 2 to 3 months, with heavy loads coming mostly just in the beginning. And in general, the site will be very well screened. You won't be able to see it from the Hudson. You won't be able to see it from the road. You won't be able to see it from Mystic Point. And you really won't be able to see it from the church once the vegetation grows, the landscape vegetation grows. Stormwater, we submitted a SWIP to the town for review, which will, go into further detail with the building department. We're well above the floodplain, and there's no wetlands on the site. We are working with DEC to confirm no impacts to the bald eagle. We've had some back and forth with them recently, and are just finalizing our documents, or we've sent them documents for final review, and we expect to receive a no impact letter soon. And then similarly with SHPO, this is ongoing coordination with SHPO. We've completed our field work, or our consultant has completed their field work for the phase 1A requirement in that area. They found some pre-contact crushed stone chippings from like stone tools made by Native Americans. This is the most prevalent type of artifact to find. They found on a couple test holes. We were able to identify that they weren't, the actual tools. It was just a site where they made the tools. They were below 20. The highest they were found was 22 inches above or below grade. And they were filled over on top of, there's new fill, new topsoil on above that pre-contact level, which was done by somebody other than us, since that original tool making time. And that's where our consultant Harkin has responded, or is responding to SHPO to let them know that if we keep to above 16 inches, which gives us a 6-inch buffer from any pre-contact items, if we keep to above the 16-inch buffer, we very likely will have no impacts to any of the archaeological findings. So at the moment we are, responding with our phase 1 document. Harkin is just preparing that final document. They're nearly complete with it. They'll respond to SHPO, and SHPO, we fully expect SHPO to agree that if we keep to that 16-inch minimum depth of construction, which we can do in our design, that we shouldn't have any impacts. So we expect to receive that in the near future as well. I think that's all I've got. Mike, I don't know if you've got anything else you wanted to touch on that I missed. Otherwise, I guess we could open it up for additional questions.
Yep, nothing to add right now.
Okay, let's hear from our staff. Valerie, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I did. I provided a memo basically highlighting the 2 outstanding items dealing with the environmental review, which were just discussed, which was dealing with the threatened and endangered species as well as the archaeology of the site. So again, as soon as they have information that they can send us, that would be helpful so that we can begin our review of those 2 last remaining environmental review aspects. And the other note, the outstanding site plan. So at last meeting, the building inspector had a few comments, and changes to the site plan have been made in order to accommodate the building inspector's comments. So I identified those, and that really dealt with the wanting to find out information on the nearest fire hydrant and the distance away from that, as well as to make sure the turnarounds conform with Appendix D. and that the driveway grading has to be no more than 10% grading. I also noted that the landscape plan was provided and the planting plan proposes to use all native plantings, and that the battery energy storage system would be adequately screened. The Austin Fire Department did review the plan and provided comments concerning the slope of the driveway access, and those comments were incorporated into the site plan. And then clearly the applicant provided a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which was submitted and will be reviewed by the town engineer. So at this point, there are just a few remaining items, specifically really relating to the environmental review process. And at which point then, once we have that information, we can begin the conclusion of that review process.
Thanks, Valerie. Kathy, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I just want to make the board aware of one thing. So under the current zoning, the applicant needs a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And in the process that we are in right now, we would complete the seeker review. And then at that point, the special permit could be granted or considered to be granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. I wanted to make the board aware that the town board is considering adopting a new law that would impact battery storage. And it would be similar to the solar law with tiers that you considered on the other application. So under that new law, this board would have to make a recommendation to the town board, and the town board, it would be a floating zone and it would be applied to the property. So currently under the existing zone, the law is that you have to apply the law that exists unless you vest under the old zoning code. And clearly there wouldn't be vesting under the old zoning code in this case because they haven't even obtained the approvals. So I just wanted to make the applicant, I think the applicant is aware of this. I believe, I can't say for certain when the town board would take action, but it might be in the next few weeks that they could be passing this new law.
Thanks, Kathy.
We could continue to act as the lead agency, but I would feel more comfortable also getting input from the town board, because at that point they would be another involved agency.
Okay, so it might be wise for us to sort of slow down our process or not?
I mean, it's not my call, it's up to the applicant. So if the applicant wants to proceed and go to the zoning board, I want the applicant to be aware though, that you might have to do something different. So you may not want to pursue going to the zoning board, but it's really the applicant's call. But just so you know, the town board has received comments back from the county. So it's something that the town board could take action on in the next, meeting or the following meeting after that.
If the town board takes action, does that eliminate the need for the zoning board?
Correct. It eliminates the need for the zoning board because you wouldn't need the special permit anymore. It would be similar to what we did with Mary Knoll with the recommendation and the application of the floating zone by the town board. So you wouldn't need to go to the zoning board anymore.
Okay.
I think we're going to leave it to the applicant to determine their path.
Right.
Yeah. Am I correct in saying that if the town board decides to adopt that new path and we no longer go to the zoning board, that the town board then becomes has a secondary approval authority after the planning board, or is it just the town board's action to install that floating zone, or is it a sort of a second spur of the process?
The town board would essentially be doing the first land use approval. This board would continue to complete the seeker process. So the rezoning would happen, essentially the application of that zone would happen by the town board. So like Jim said, you wouldn't need to go to the zoning board anymore.
Okay.
You'll still be stuck in front of the planning board.
Yeah, then you'll have to come back to the planning board after the zone is applied. Then you would come back to the planning board for site plan review. So it's the same process essentially that you've been in. It's just that with this new law is imminent potentially. No guarantees. I'm not saying what the town board is going to do, but they could be in a position to adopt the new law. I mean, Valerie, if you want to add to
Right.
that.
That's correct. I mean, I anticipate the town board adopting the new law within the next, if it's not this one coming up, it's the next one after that. So within the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Sandy, when's the next ZBA meeting?
The next ZBA meeting was I believe Monday, or that you could get on, but we'd have to first complete SECRA, which sounds like we're not there. There's still some open environmental issues anyway. And the zoning board wouldn't want to consider it until the SECRA process was completed. I mean, they've known about the process and been kept abreast of what's going on before the planning board, but they feel comfortable with the planning board completing the SECRA process.
Okay.
Right now, we're not really eligible to go to the zoning board, so we would need to complete the seeker process with you first. So
Right.
maybe we can make the decision once we have the seeker process completed. If we can't concurrently go in front of the zoning board, is what you're saying?
I mean, you could always start the process before. It's up to you. But I just want you to make aware that you may spend time in front of the zoning board for nothing.
Yeah. How about the public hearing that we're engaged in right now? Do we have to come back to the planning board after going to the town board and start from scratch with our public hearing and our planning board reviewing our application under the new law, or is this sort of what we're doing right now repurposed once the new law is in place?
Well, I can explain.
Well, it's the same
Okay.
application, so.
Okay.
And the new law would have a public hearing at the town board, right, for the application of the floating zone. But this public hearing is for site plan approval.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to go through the site plan approval process. Once again, we'd have to go through a separate public hearing process with the town board for the floating zone, approval of the floating zone.
It's not adding any additional meetings onto you because you would have to go through the public hearing with the zoning board.
Sure.
Now you have to go through a public hearing with the town board for the rezoning.
Okay.
I can't imagine they would get through the zoning process before the town board addresses this from the sound of things.
Right.
The zoning board will
We don't think
probably
so.
defer
I think
anyway.
Right, and I think that's why we're bringing this up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll defer to Greg in a moment, but it doesn't sound like there's much utility in us going to the zoning board if there, we're very, very unlikely to complete that process by the time the town board adopts its new process, and we will have wasted that time. It seems like that's the logical.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. So
The town board is aware of this application, so this is, so they clearly know that this application is pending, and they recognize that this application would be potentially part of the new approval process.
and yeah, we were able to review the bylaws that were put in place, so we feel that our project would meet all the requirements adopted by the town officially. So it sounds like we should go that route. Especially saying we can't get seeker approval yet without these environmental issues. Per your recommendation.
Right, so we're just going to go forward with us here anyway, just to keep it rolling along. Any other questions or comments, Kathy?
No.
Okay. Dan, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
We had a couple of comments in our last memorandum, which the applicants generally addressed. I guess I'll be reaching out to Greg. I guess I had a couple of technical comments on the stormwater report. They're relatively minor, so I think we can resolve those offline.
Okay.
Otherwise, my comments have generally been satisfied.
Great. Okay, are there any questions or comments from the members of the board? Jim?
I'm comfortable with the application.
Donna?
I had just a couple comments. One, I just would like to commend you on the landscaping plan. It's really amazing, and you definitely went well above what you are required to do. So I think that's really wonderful. I did just have a couple questions, comments on the site plan on how you are addressing the plants. So how, I didn't see any deer protection. Did you have any plans for that? Like protecting the plants? Because that's probably pretty heavily populated by deer there.
Our landscape architects seem to think that they were generally somewhat deer-resistant species, but I'm going to defer to them on that and say that,
If you could just
you know,
tell
we
them
did
that,
say,
yeah, it's Westchester deer, like Westchester Ossining Westchester deer. They're very, very hungry. They're very different than upstate deer.
okay,
There's not
yeah,
enough
and I
to
think,
eat here, you know.
yeah, we'll have to, I know that we did ask them to use deer resistant,
Yeah,
I know, to the extent possible. So, you know, we'll have to monitor, and if,
Right.
you know, if we get certain plants that are eaten up a lot more than others, we might have to swap out a species, you know, or something in the future if it's just, you know, too much. But I don't know what else we have for, you know, deer proofing these.
Yes, I just would
landscaping.
mention it to them because I'm familiar with the plants that you chose, and some of them, you know, they are deer listed deer resistant, but they get eaten. So it just depends. That maybe not the deer at St. Augustine's. Maybe they would be kinder. Who knows?
Yeah.
Okay. So just quickly, the way that they're saying, so this must be the landscape people listed how they're going to be planting the plants. Is that who provided that information?
Yeah, Saratoga Associates.
Okay, so the root ball should be the ball, the hole that they're digging should only be as deep as the root ball. If you could just have them change that, because that's wet soil there, and it's going to sink. Those plants are going to sink.
Okay.
They really don't have to amend the soil. It should just be the soil that they take out of the hole goes back in the hole. And then not to use shredded bark mulch because that's a fire hazard. It has been a fire hazard. I don't know if it would be there because the soil's kind of damp, but they should use nuggets instead. That's it.
Thanks. Garrett, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
Yeah. First, I'd like also to commend you on the planting plan. It looks nice. I'm a little bit concerned about the archaeological findings. Can you tell me that where the test holes were located? How many test holes there were? What fraction of them showed those tooling chips?
Yeah, we got the map back from our archaeologist last week. So I wasn't able to share it in the time with everybody to, you know, get the review. So I can share my screen right now though, so I can do that if you want to take a look at it with me. That's not a problem. This is the map from Harkin. We have, I think they did the required amount of shovel tests per, you know, the size of the project. You can see this is the area of our road, and then it leads back into the area of the battery storage. You can see in orange here is the preliminary pre-contact site. You know, there's a plus and two triangles and a dot, and there's a key down here. So the plus is historic pre-contact. Triangle is positive pre-contact. The ST stands for shovel test, and then the dot is also positive ST historic shovel test. They did, you know, they sent us over some more information on the depth that they found the pre-contact items. And like they said, it was just the rock shavings from tools that were made in the past. Then they were, I think 22 inches was the minimum. I think one of them was 23 inches deep. And then, you know, it was over topsoil. And I can pull up, let me read the email from the archaeologist so I don't get it wrong. He said, In a follow-up to our phone conversation the other day, 3 tests contained pre-contact artifacts in a former topsoil stratum that is now buried. The table below shows the depths of that buried topsoil layer relative to the present ground surface at each of the 3 test locations. So test number 2 was 23 to 24 inches, 3 was 22 to 23 inches, and 23 was 28 to 32 inches. He said, our recommendation will be to factor in a 6-inch buffer for vertical avoidance. That is, for any ground disturbing impacts within the archaeological site boundaries, we recommend limiting impacts to a depth of 16 inches relative to the current ground surface. We recommend placing buried cables outside of the site to the east in the vicinities of tests 1, 4, and 5. So the recommendations, and I did speak with the archaeologist as well to get his recommendations on how we should proceed. And he said he's dealt with SHPO in this area a lot, as well as the native tribes in this area a lot. And the findings in this are not anything out of the ordinary. That's actually fairly regular. So for a site this small, he said that it's very likely that if we stay out, above that 16-inch threshold and not disturb anything that's there already, that they're going to be okay with that, our site plan, and give us a no impact approval. That's the strategy that's typically used in the area.
And this this orange line showing the labeled as a preliminary pre-contact site, is that determined just on the basis of there being the high density of those positive findings there?
Yeah, I think it was that they didn't find anything in 6, 22, 21, or 20. And I'm not 100% sure. I didn't get a good explanation because they're still writing up the report of where that orange line came in. But it seems to be that the boundary of it was, shovel tests that didn't return any positive findings versus tests that did.
And the circle with a dot, what was that again? I thought that was also a positive.
Yeah.
Number 1.
It says historic, but it's not pre-contact. So it's not so it's just, I think that I don't know. I'm not sure I'd have to look at what their, shovel test data was, which I don't have in front of me at the moment.
So, I'm not an archaeologist, but it seems astonishing to me that, what is this, maybe, 20 test holes come up with, 3 pre-contact archaeological findings. I mean, it seems like an enormous positive finding. Perhaps naively, I would think that the appropriate thing to do here would be, before building on top of this site, would be to actually dig it, dig down to the 23 inches, and basically excavate, remove items that are there before they are buried forever and lost essentially forever. I know that in the archaeological world, there is, sort of a new, over the last 20 years, tendency to not remove objects, but to leave them in place once they're found. But in this case, if there's a potential for significant findings under what's going to be a, essentially a permanent construction structure, it would seem to me, like I say, naively maybe, that the right thing to do would be to pull anything out, or at least convince ourselves that those are just shavings, and 1 foot away we're not going to find amazing pre-contact archaeological findings of significance, not just run-of-the-mill chips.
Well, might I suggest that we wait to see, first of all, we haven't seen the actual report itself. And
Right.
then let's also see what SHPO has to state, because the process right now, which the applicant is proposing, is the typical process that SHPO usually undertakes, especially if you're not going to disturb those layers. So I would suggest, why don't we look at to see what the actual report says, and then we can make, further, we can inquire further about this situation.
I think that makes sense.
Yep, we'll share
Okay,
the
Garrett.
report with you. We should be, I would expect it within the week. We'll share the report as soon as we have it. That'll be sent to SHPO, and then we'll get SHPO's response. And like I said, I mean, I'm only going off of what what Harkin, our consultant, has told us, and they said this is a very typical process, and that they do find these types of findings all over the place, and that
Right, so why don't we wait until we see the actual report? That's fine.
Okay. All
Carolyn,
right.
do you have any questions or comments at this time?
Thank you.
Yep.
I just have one more question. This is Donna. So you're saying there's a drainage ditch that you're going to be building over. What is that?
Well, we're avoiding the drainage ditches. We're using the drainage ditch as part of our SWIP. If you can, I can send you a copy of the SWIP.
It's just being addressed. I'll defer to Dan on that, but because I tend to call them. I don't know that it's a drainage ditch as opposed to just runoff from wetland watershed runoff. So
it's just a swale. Yeah, it's just a swale.
Okay, so I'll defer to Dan on that.
Okay, Carolyn, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
No comments, just that I agree that we should wait to see what SHPO has to say. That's all.
Okay, very good. Are there any members of the public who are interested in speaking at this time? Sandy?
There's someone named Jean with his hand up, or her hand up. Jean?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. At the last meeting, I had asked a question of Greg about whether this was the first step in a two-step process, with the second step building solar panels. And Greg indicated that it wasn't, that this would be too small a project for his organization. My question is really for the planning board. Given where the site of where this battery storage facility is located, it leaves a considerable amount of property available for solar panels to be built. Was St. Augustine's ever questioned about whether it's their intention to have this be the first step in the process and then have another organization come in and build the solar panels? And if they weren't questioned, would the board consider asking them that question?
Kathy,
Jean, could we have your address? I'm sorry. Jean, could we have your full name and address?
Sure. It's Eugene Buccini, and I'm at 108 Mystic Drive, Ossining.
Thank you.
Okay, Kathy, could you give us a quick overview about what our requirements for the planning board to pull in the St. Augustine's on this?
I mean, we have an application before us that it's within your purview to consider, and the owner is not allowing that application, but I'm not really sure we can go so far to ask what future plans they may have for their property. We don't do that with other applications. And
even if we did ask them, we couldn't hold them to it one way or the other anyway, since they're not the applicant.
I mean, clearly there's no master plan, according to what this applicant is saying, to do anything different than what they're proposing right now. It's not part of a phase that we would be separating out of the phases of a project. There is no other phase.
Right, and if there turned out to be an additional project after this, the planning board would consider it at that time that was actually requested, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and at that time we would put in and weigh all the factors that exist at that time.
That's correct.
Okay, Jean, does that answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the public or comments?
There's no others with their hand up.
Okay, so I take it that we should be adjourning this hearing until the next submissions from the applicant. Is that correct, Valerie? Kathy?
Might want to just adjourn it to the next meeting, which is February 3rd, unless that's not enough time. Is that the next meeting, Sandy? That is, right?
Yes, February 3rd or February 17th.
Applicant, which is your pleasure?
I expect to have the phase 1B report done before then, so I will get that over to you, and hopefully we can have that for your review. And then I think maybe at that next meeting we can discuss whether the town board has acted. I know there was that that discussion earlier, so I think when you have confirmed that we can't act on seeker, so we can't get to the zoning board regardless. So I don't think we have the choice to go to the zoning board anyway. So I think, you know, we're going to be at the next possible meeting, and that'll depend if we can get you the materials you're looking for.
Great. And you do envision getting it to us by the next meeting, right?
That's the goal. Yes, definitely.
Okay. Can I have a motion to that effect, adjourning it to the next meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Jim. Second? Who's second?
I'll
Any
second. I'll second.
Thanks, Don. Carolyn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Garrett?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I say yes as well. So we'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is the Park Knolls residential development on 87 Hoff, amendment to the resolution of the site plan approval. The applicant here?
Yes.
Okay, Valerie,
Can
what's
you hear
our
me?
status on this one right now?
This particular application, if you recall from last meeting, there were two issues that were raised by the public that dealt with lighting and landscaping. And Dan Ciarcia went out to the site, did a site visit, and I'll turn it over to him to talk about his findings and his recommendations.
Great. Do we have that report at this point in front of us?
I believe you do. It was sent over this afternoon.
If you like me to go through it, I can just run through it quickly with you.
Thank you, Dan.
So what we did is we went out one evening, obviously the best time to evaluate the lighting. And I guess the concern at the last meeting was the spillover onto the Deerfield site. So I did look at the fixtures to confirm that they were what was specified in the on the approved site plan, as well as the placement of the fixtures. I did walk between the sites to see what the light spillover was like, and the light from Park Knolls was not spilling over onto Deerfield. However, the effect, I guess, because of I think the intensity of the LED lighting, even though the lighting on the ground is where it's supposed to be, the perception when you look at it, the fixtures look very bright. So I asked the applicant to install some shields on three fixtures. Two of them are on the west side, the part of Deerfield closest to 9A. And there was one light location on the other side nearby to the eastern section of Deerfield. So the applicants agreed to do that. They've been ordered, and he'll install them as soon as they arrive. To the landscaping is not complete. A lot of the trees are in. There's still a few trees and some shrubberies that need to go in, but obviously the time to do that would be in the spring. This isn't a time to be planting the stuff, nor is it available really. So I don't see that there's any reason to believe the applicant's not going to do it. And obviously he'll be seeking the full CO for the building and the CO for the second building when complete. So we certainly have adequate leverage on this applicant to see he fulfills all the conditions of his approval. So that's what I observed during my my visit.
Any other questions or comments from the staff at this time? Valerie?
No, I have no comments at this time. The draft resolution was sent to the board last month. And so once you are comfortable with the, the resolution of those two issues, this board can vote on the amended draft resolution.
Okay, so I assume what Dan has asked the applicant to do can be inserted into the resolution?
That's correct.
Okay. Kathy, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I don't. So is there one quick question. The landscaping, it's not additional landscaping, it's just the landscaping called for under the site plan, correct?
That's correct.
So we don't have to really address that because it's nothing additional. I think the only additional item are the two shields. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so just that one change, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 3 shields.
3 shields, okay.
If the board would like, I can make an amendment to the current resolution, incorporating those, identifying those 3 shields, and have a final resolution for this board's approval at the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Before we get to that, any members of the board want to make any questions or comments at this time? Donna?
Yeah, so there's a lot of lights there, but there are only 3 are going to be shielded. I don't really understand why all of them aren't going to be shielded.
Well, it's really the ones that are more internal to the site aren't going to spill over. We were just trying to address the ones that were closest to the neighbors.
So is that the ones, so there's a whole bunch that are by the front so it's by the road? Because it's just it's an overall appearance of very bright, it's like industrial rather than like,
Well, we do have street lights out there that are.
They have a lot of lights.
They are LED. Additional lighting of our highways, I don't know that that's a bad thing for safety.
Well, I think the ones that bother me, because I went out again, the ones that I just are the lower ones. It seems I went back twice because last time I went before 7 and I was told that they went off at 7, which I'm curious about. Is that going to happen after construction, that it turns off at 7, the lights? It just seems odd to turn the lights off at 7. But so that's a question that I would have. But the ones that are lower, those ones that are the stick-like ones, I wouldn't consider those downward facing lights. I mean, they just, the light, like it hits you right in the, right in the face. It's like, they're very bright. I just can't imagine that's what everyone intended, like when they got approval for that. It's definitely more industrial looking than a residential looking. Because the light is not casting down. So it might not be spilling into the other places, but it's, it's bright. So I guess I defer to everyone else what their opinion is if they've gone out to see it. The other question I have is that from one of the neighbors, we received letters about the landscaping. So on the side of where is the landscaping missing now? Is it where the letters that we received, where the neighbors were concerned? Is that where the landscaping is missing, or do we need to add, or?
The landscaping that's missing is mostly around the buildings. Hold on for a second.
Because I understand the front is not done yet, because that was going to be waiting till spring. So I do understand that.
Yeah, I think there's just one tree that's missing by the corner of the building, but that's a deciduous tree, so it's not providing a lot of screening. The white spruces that are supposed to go in, I guess there's 5 of them there, I believe are all in.
What about the front? The front planting's not done, correct?
That's right, some of it's not done.
Right.
But again, it's, you know, we've got an approved plan, so we're just
Yeah.
ensuring that what was on the approved plan is adhered to.
Right, so but it's more than just one tree is missing in the front, right? It's, because there's
But what are
nothing.
you calling the front?
Where where they have the sign, I guess, like there's, because it was my understanding that whole area wasn't going to be planted until this spring, because they were, you know, using that to store things, I guess, while they were doing the construction. I don't have it in front of me, the landscape plan, but that's what it was a big empty area, and it was my understanding that was going to be
Are you
planted.
talking about the area in front of building 1?
Oh,
building 2.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure.
I think it's built.
Yeah, because there's a lot missing in front of building
There's a
1.
lot missing, right? That's what it's not just one. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Yeah, and I definitely understand that that's going to happen in the spring. But what about the trees where the neighbor sent all the pictures? How it looks very open. Is there going to be any trees there? I guess that's on the southern side. What would that be? The eastern?
North. That's the south.
North?
North?
I have no sense of direction.
It's in the back, right, closer to Deerfield? Is that where
Yeah.
they're complaining that the trees basically?
Closer to the highway, the side that's closer to the highway. Yeah. Because it does look pretty open there. So that's my comments on it, but I do feel that it's too bright, particularly compared to the other complexes, which have like an amber color light, and I know that that's possible to get an amber color light. So with the LEDs.
We follow the light Calvin that they want.
Well, we did go through the color temperature on the LED lighting at the time. I think that was an issue that was discussed. And the fixtures, you know, appear to be at the appropriate color temperature.
Right, I understand that, but I don't know if people knew that with that amount of fixtures, how bright it was going to be. You know, so it just seems like if you're going to have that amount of fixtures, it should be lower light, or there should be less fixtures.
I guess, you know, at this point, you know, I think the issue is that he's building the project out in conformance with the plans.
I definitely understand that, but I'm saying that maybe that needs to change.
Well, the board can look at this as a demonstration plan, and perhaps on the next one, if you don't like how this looks, we can adjust accordingly. But we're following the plans as approved by this board.
Yeah, but can't there be a field change? I mean, he's asking for a change right now, so can't there be another change? Like, I don't understand why, you know, that it can't just be a field change to make it more compatible with the area.
Well, I think that's a question that the applicant will have to field.
If I could interject for a second, with regard to that, at the last meeting I asked if there were any way that those lights, that the intensity of those lights could be adjusted downward. At the time, the applicant did not know, but said that he would check with the specifications or the company that makes those that light. It's possible that a simple voltage reduction in the control box at the base of each would accomplish that. Did the applicant have a chance to investigate that?
That's where the virtual shields are recommended. The shields are recommended in 3 locations. One at the north entrance into the property, which...
That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Right. Yeah. So
okay, so that's what we try to do by putting in the 3 shields. There is the only way to cut down on the intensity would be alternating the fixtures in that some would be on and some would be off. But they're all at the 3,000 phase of the lighting as it was initiated. So the lighting is a white light. It's not a yellow light as the older fixtures are. All of the fixtures today are going to this type of fixture. Our neighbors are starting to turn over and change their fixtures to this type of fixture also, because it's the most energy efficient and best fixture you have. So the question comes up is everybody's going to have it. But the only way that we can't change the bulb in the fixture. We can only put a shield on the pole lights that would make it go downward and not out and spread into some other area. And we try to do that with the 3 shields. The only other way to possibly get a lower intensity where you would put 1 bollards on, because all these bollards are 4 foot high, and they have a cap on the top. They don't shine up, they shine down. So the only other way to do this is alternate the fixtures based on 1 on, 1 off.
So that's an interesting option. I don't know whether or not such a plan would be approvable by the building inspector. But what I was asking last time was whether or not those fixtures could be adjusted.
They don't have dimmers on them. No, they can't be put, dimmers can.
Dimmers on them.
How do you know that dimmers cannot be put on them?
That's what our engineer said. The fixtures are not compatible for dimmers.
Okay.
Like putting on a street light and have a dimmer on it. You know, these fixtures are not made for that purpose.
Well, I'm not talking about a dial on them. I'm talking about an internal resistor or something being applied.
They said no.
All right, so you investigated that and it is not possible?
Not possible at this point. So we have two options. The shields on if there's any lighting going beyond the property line, which there was not, but we felt that in order to get those 3 areas that were closest to Deerfield shielded would be the entranceway where there is a brand new fence just put in between the property line, that white fence. That's the northern eastern corner. The rear of building number 2, which would be the north southerly portion, and the front of building number 1 on the southerly top parking lot portion. So they're the 3 lights that were closest to Deerfield that had any possibility of going over the site, over the property line. But even those did not go over. According to even our engineer made a site visit recently, and you have a letter from him that the lights were installed, and I hate to say this, according to the plan, and not going over the property.
It's also the engineer's letter also showed it was in accordance with your code, that it complied with both what you approved and with what your code requires. I'm Adam Wakestein, by the way.
Adam, could you say whether or not the alternative that was suggested, alternating, on and off, whether that would be within, would be allowable by our code?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to give an opinion on that. I haven't looked at the code. I suspect it's not, because obviously you're balancing a number of considerations such as safety.
Right.
Lighting. It's always a balance. It's always tough.
Yeah, Gareth, I also want to say, I live in Fox Hill, and we recently, when I say recently, within the last year or so, we changed our lighting from what was I guess a traditional incandescent to new LEDs in order to save electricity. And I will say that, you know, when they looked at the intensity, et cetera, it was supposed to be similar to what we had. These are much brighter because they're white. And, you know, it's good for people who want to go out walking at night, and maybe not so good for some people who, you know, find a little too much light coming through their windows. But I will say that when I walk my dog at night, I appreciate it. So, you know, I get that some people don't like the white, but that's, if you're going to the LEDs, it's hard to find something that's, you know,
I think the issue is the amount.
Is that softer yellow that we're kind of used to.
But it's the amount of fixtures. Like, is there any way to reduce the amount of fixtures?
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
So I made two visits out to the site, and during one of my visits, all the lights were on, and during the second visit, just the bollards were on. And with the overhead lights off, I thought it was not too far off of the Deerfield lighting scheme. I mean, there are fewer, smaller lights at Deerfield, but I didn't think there was that much of a difference when the bollards were just on by themselves. When you said that the lights go off at a certain hour, is that the overhead lights that go off?
The pole lights go off, yes.
At what time?
We didn't set a time yet. We started at 7 o'clock, but we have, but they're not, the project is not occupied yet.
Right.
So the safety feature hasn't been brought in. So we've been turning the pole lights off at 7 and the ballards stay on.
Frankly, when the pole lights go off, I didn't see that much of a drastic difference between the neighboring properties and this one. Obviously, there are more light fixtures on this property, you know, being a multi-unit property, but I didn't think it was that bad once the pole lights were off. So if they're going off at a reasonable hour, I think we're finding a happy medium in this conversation.
I have to add that I visited the property also. I'm right down the road from them. And yes, when the pole lights are on, it definitely looks a lot brighter. But after they're shut down, I would think it's tolerable. And much safer for anybody who actually goes out and walk around at night. So are there any other comments or questions at this time from the members of the board? Okay, are there members of the public who wish to speak at this time?
Yes, we have a member of the public. His name is Jason Mencher.
Okay, Jason?
Jason?
Yes, hello. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I sent a letter to the board. I'm not exactly clear if everyone received it or had time to read it, but Ms. Sharrett addressed some of the concerns I had. I had written about the landscaping. I'll just make two quick comments on the lighting. One is the grade of this property is such that the small bollards, while they're 4 feet tall, I look directly at them from my second floor window. And I believe the property is a higher grade than both the two neighboring sides of Deerfield, except the back of that property. Deerfield is way up a hill. So I think maybe there is a misalignment of people's concerns about the lighting, though they're 4 feet tall, with where their houses actually sit, which is below the grade level of where those two new apartment buildings are. And what I'm hearing from the applicant is that they do turn them off at 7 now, but it sounds like when the buildings are occupied, they'll be turned off later. So we're talking about them reducing the light emitting from the neighborhood after 7 p.m., but if they stay on until 10 or 11 p.m., then I suppose that's kind of a different calculus. But I really did want to speak, and I'll be much more brief than last time about my comments about the landscaping. I'm not clear if anyone looked at the issue I raised about additional trees having been removed that weren't on the tree, I think it's remediation or removal plan. And again, since the property is so much higher than our property, the small trees or whatever was contemplated on the landscaping plan, perhaps on paper, looked like it might be sufficient. I submitted photos. I'm happy to take more even when the current trees do grow, the ones that exist grow in. The line of sight isn't broken at all. And I've looked around and I put in my letter how we abut roughly to Fox Hill, but there's a nice buffer of land between us and forested region. Since the applicant built as close as he could to the property line, and that property was once generally an unimproved lot except for a small home with highly dense vegetation, it completely changed the context of that property. I'm an attorney. I'm also in urban planning school at Columbia. I'm about to graduate. I am for apartments in Ossining. I am for this development, but I strongly think that without having the proper shrubbery and trees around the property, it's disrupting the character of what the neighboring developments are, which are lower density, single family condos. This is a higher density lot. It was, I believe, upzoned or rezoned so that it could be built this way. And because most of the property was effectively raised and the trees and shrubbery and wild growth was removed, there's a spillover not just of light, but of visibility, both directions, that people from that property could conveniently walk down their hill onto ours because there's really no division. And there initially was that. So I don't want to take any more time. I laid out my points in my letter. I don't know if everyone had the chance to read it, or maybe it wasn't received. I don't know, but I tried to make as clear as I could and as unbiased as I could what the issues I see as not only a homeowner nearby are, but as someone in the town. Because this could set a precedent that a new development can clear their property, not keep the growth and the visual appeal the same as the rest of the community. And if this sets that precedent, then if I was a future developer, I'd say, well, look at this one. They cleared from edge to edge of the property. They did leave a lot of growth in the back of their property, but it's an undeveloped area. The closest point between our property and theirs is about, it's either 50 or less, whatever the required buffer was from the property line. And this is a 35-foot or so 30-foot tall apartment building that's 10 or 12 feet raised above the grade of where I am. So we're looking up, and the 6 or 8 foot trees that are there will take a dozen years or more to grow into whatever height they mature to. So perhaps on paper, the landscaping plan was sufficient, but after tree removals that I think were in excess of what the tree preservation plan contemplated, and as the landscaping has been done in practice, and I can't tell if Mr. Ciarcia, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, evaluated that specific side that I pointed out in my letter, whether the right amount of trees and shrubbery and heights and tree diameters were installed. Just that line of sight is incongruous with the greater Ossining, how developments are located next to each other. At least not in the downtown where it's more apartment style on top of itself, but in the areas many of us live in. So those are the points I want to raise. I hope the board has had time to read my letter. I put a lot of thought and effort into it. I believe on the last call I made clear I want to be a good neighbor. I know the developer wants to be a good neighbor. But I think if he is seeking a TCO that wasn't originally contemplated, then it is perfectly reciprocal, otherwise it would be gratuitous, that the planning board perhaps requires additional plantings to supplement both where trees were removed and what the current state of affairs is, even with the plantings that are in, if that in fact constitutes most of the plantings. I'm happy to answer any questions. I am a concerned neighbor and I'm a concerned town member. And that's why I'm on this call. That's why I wrote this letter. That's why I was on the last call. Thank you all very much for listening to what I have to say.
I just wanted to make sure that the planning board understands, and also the public, that this project is actually still under construction. So we will have, as typical with all your projects that go under construction, once they're ready for final site plan, or excuse me, final certificate of occupancy, John Hamilton usually will notify the planning board, and there will be another site inspection. So at that time, if for some reason the planning board finds that there are, significant gaps within the landscaping, there is that ability to request that the applicant provide additional landscaping in particular areas as part of a field change.
It's actually in your resolution of approval in section 3F, where you will have to be notified when the CO is issued that you can before it's issued, that you can go out and do your site inspection and require adjustments that are consistent with the plan, but minor adjustments. And right now, for you to go out and make a determination when there's still planting to be done and we're out of season and the client can't plant because of the time of year, I would submit it doesn't make sense. It's a decision for a future point that's not too far down the road, particularly in light of the fact that Mr. Baldati is asking for the TCO just so that he can show those units and take care of insurance issues that will result if he doesn't have the TCO. The only thing I would say from a personal perspective is I lived at Fox Hill for the first 5 years of my marriage. I won't say, that was about 35 years ago. It did not look the way it does now. It has changed over 35 years. Some of it looks worse and some of it has grown in. So, and you probably wouldn't design things the same way now, but it's not necessarily fair to compare something that's new that's going in with something that's a completely developed community that's been around for over 3 decades.
We pick up this conversation in the spring with Mr. Mencher.
We will definitely be planting in the spring season. Once we are able to order the balance of our trees. We have planted a substantial amount of trees. There is an issue that on the property line of Deerfield and Park Knolls, where during several storms, those trees which were tagged as saved were destroyed due to storms, and they were recorded in the building department on what trees fell down, and the tags were removed and given to the building inspector so he knew exactly what trees fell and what were the cause of those trees. Yes, several of them were. And we are continually planting. These trees take, as everybody knows, years to mature and grow. There's a certain amount of trees you can plant before they sub each other out and they don't get to the point where they do what they're supposed to do. But as the resolution says, and it's very clear, that the planning board can take a walk at the date before the final CO of the project and request additional trees where they see a need for them. And if we want to get the CO, we have to put in those trees. So it's as simple as that. The planning board has a continual way of mitigating the planting and requesting additional plants. We have planted a considerable amount of the blooming trees. There were 92 trees required and we planted 54 of them. We still have 38 to plant, so we've planted 58% of them. The hedge shrubs that go around the buildings and front of the site where you enter, there's 126 plants going in there, of which we have not planted any of them. And there were approximately 70 grasses that were planted in the wetlands that were planted, and the wetlands will be continually reviewed for those plants that die or are in ill health, so that they have to be replaced for a 5-year period. So there's a lot of conditions that go into getting the final operation of this project. And we've been in the area for a long time, and we've been builders, and we will not walk away from this project. We understand what the planning board wants. We want it as well, because we want the best project in town so we can rent it and keep it rented. And we will do whatever we have to do to make it look good. And we appreciate the planning board taking this time to review this application, because it's one thing, we're getting a lot of calls for rentals, but most people say, I love the look at the website, but I don't understand it. I don't know what 7'8" means and 6'5" means, and I don't know the dent. I want to come in and touch and feel and see the apartment before I rent it. And right now, we can't do that.
So I feel that if there is that leeway for in the later part of before the final approval, my problem with the lights could possibly be mitigated with plantings, either plantings that you intend to do and just haven't done, particularly in the front, that might make the view of this project look better from the road when the plants are done. So I would, at this point, I think I would just wait on that issue till that next phase of our approval or our site plan, our site walk during the next phase.
Yeah, I noticed that there was some questions on the chat, on the questions and answer section, and one of them was that whether this is being televised. And Sandy, this is going to be on our YouTube?
It'll be
Or how is it
available on
viewed?
YouTube tomorrow. Yes, it's not televised.
Okay. Anyway, any other questions from the board or the public?
I just wanted to respond to one of the questions that were from the public, asking if all this information is publicly available, and it is. It's actually posted on the website.
Mr. Mencher, comfortable with the thought of waiting till the spring? Because I did read your letter. I tend to agree with some of your comments, but I think it's premature to start picking locations or additional plantings until everything's in place. So I think it would be wise if we were to pick up this conversation in the spring, once the plants are in.
I think that's perfectly reasonable, and I'm perfectly comfortable with it. And I appreciate Mr. Beldotti's comments, and I definitely believe he does want to do the right thing when the time comes. Is the report Mr. C.R. Sierra referred to also available on the website, the planning website, the report when he went out and walked the site? Or is that an internal report that's not a public document? But yes, Mr. Basanas, yes, absolutely reasonable, and thank you for reading my letter.
The report was just sent out today, and I believe Sandy will be able to get it posted on the website within the next day or so. And it's less of a report and more of a memorandum. So in case you're looking for something that's pages long, it's just a memorandum.
What's our next step on this, Valerie, Kathy?
So if the board is so inclined, it can close the public hearing tonight and adopt the proposed resolution as amended with the additional requirements for the screening of those 3 lights. Or, if you want to see it in writing, I guess you could request that we amend the resolution and recirculate it and consider it at the next meeting. But that's
Do we have a time in the resolution on when those overhead pole lights go out?
No. Is that something that we could set in the resolution, Mr. Beldotti, about specifying when the overhead pole lights go out?
My concern with specifying that is safety of the resident of the project. And I think that's going to be a determination again when all the shrubbery goes in and the lighting around the buildings, which will shield, which will give a lot of a less brightness to the ballards. I think that certain lights of the pole lights should remain on. People who come in late at night or come in from work at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm sure they don't want to go through an area that has no lighting at all. I think this is something we don't want the lights on either to interfere with our tenants and their health and safety in their apartments. So we have not put on a timing at that of them going off. And
Can you suggest a time to us that you're comfortable with? Because I was there with the pole lights off and just the bollards on. I didn't see any dark spots, and I walked around the entire complex. But I want you to be comfortable with it. So why don't you come up with a time that we can
this, and I think a lot of things have to be looked at here. I think at some point in time, you're right that maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of the pole lights remain on and the other ones go off at a certain time. One of the key ones maybe near the dumpster area, or maybe the one near the generator and the emergency entrances, or the entrance into the project, or or a light behind where the pool is, in that area where it's away and it's an internal light and not an external light.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, I think there's certain adjustments, and I think that we want to work with the planning board and we want to work with our neighbors. But we don't want to give up safety and have an issue where a tenant falls and then sues us for not having proper lighting in the site.
Which is why I don't want to dictate the time. I want you to tell us.
That's why I don't want to give you time, because insurance companies are very difficult today to deal with. Our liability.
Well, until you actually have tenants at the location, you can actually have a time set at this point, right? We can always revisit the time once we're giving out the CO.
Yeah, we could revisit the time once we get the CO out, but we are now using a 7 o'clock number that they go off. And I think there's 1 or 2 that remain on. One near the emergency exit and entrance, and one near the in back of the building 1. I think
so. Can we go with that until you tell us otherwise?
We're go with the 7 o'clock number, okay? But we don't want to be tied into that until we get to the point where we're putting in our tenants. For the time being, we will at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Good job. Good kitty. Good job.
That seems fair.
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
Would it be possible to add shielding to the pole lights for the few that you mentioned you'd like to keep on throughout the evening for safety reasons? The one at the generator, the one at the dumpster, and so forth. Would it be possible to limit the spread of those few to a greater extent than you would the pole lights generally?
The only thing I say, Garrett, is those are the lights that don't have any effect on any. One of the lights that is on continually is directly across the street from the driveway going into the Woods property, Westchester Woods. And they have a light right out in the front of their property also as bright as that one, you know what I'm saying? So that one there is where the intersection of the emergency vehicles would come into the property.
Mm-hmm.
That is an pretty important light that is maintained. And it's probably, it's far enough away from Deerfield, it's far enough away from the Woods, because that's their driveway where they have lights on all night long anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So think that one.
Okay, that sounds reasonable.
You know, the one that's up on the top where the entranceway is, that's being shielded because that's pretty close to Deerfield, so we're shielding that one, and we looked at that closely.
Okay.
We're shielding the one next to our neighbor, Jason's property. That's on the other side, so we shielded that. And we're shielding one in the rear where, I don't know if you know where the lift pump station is.
I do.
Yeah, okay. That one right there is close to that lift pump station, so we're shielding that because there is a residence there. But I don't think it's useful at this point, but if you come out at your next visit, when that may be, or if you want to meet with us one afternoon or night or whatever, and you see another one, these shields can be always ordered and put up if there's a necessity to do it.
That sounds good. Thank you for your open-mindedness to that.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we can move ahead and make a motion on this at this point with the resolution as amended with all these suggestions we've already spoke of.
Also move.
Second.
Do you want to close the public hearing first? Or?
Okay, could I have a motion to close the public hearing first?
So move.
Second again.
Donna, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
Yeah. Am I on? Yes.
Gareth?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. And going back to the resolution, Carolyn, do you make a motion?
Yes, so move.
Jim, do you second?
Yes.
Donna, how do you vote?
Yes.
Gareth?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Jim?
Yep.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So Kathy, Valerie, do you have any questions you need to finish the draft?
No, not at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience. We appreciate it very much.
You're welcome. The next item on the agenda is Sidon, 49 Croton Dam Road, architectural review, new garage addition and site amendments.
I'm here.
Hi, Mr. Sidon.
How are
I
you?
believe you, okay, so this is the first public hearing for this matter, correct, Valerie?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the applicant is,
Would you like to make
the applicant is
a
also,
short presentation?
the applicant is also going to be appearing before the zoning board this month as well, or in February, I believe.
No, on 25th,
25th, thank you.
Monday.
This month.
Monday. Yep. Yeah, so kind of what was presented last month, what we're looking to do is add on the left side of my property, which is, I think, all in conforming, something called the shed bar, which is just a small out structure to just have an interior space for, that also has a bathroom, a handicapped shaped size bathroom for a lot of outside entertaining, because it seems like, we certainly hope that when COVID is over, there'll be a new normal, whatever it is. There'll still be a lot of outside entertaining, so we just wanted to have an outside entertaining space on the, if we're going from the back side of my property looking towards the back. On the left side, that's a small building. The bigger project is on the right side, which is taking my detached two-car garage, turning that into an attached four-car garage, and also putting on a recreation room on the second floor of the four-car garage, and also pushing back just a few feet just to have some additional storage. On the original plan that I presented last month, the bathroom was actually located on the right side of the property, and on the right side of the property there are no windows. And we're keeping that to have no windows on the right side of the property. We've elected to relocate the bathroom more towards the rear of the property because my family really wanted me to add a small shower. So it went from a powder room to a 3/4 bath with just a shower. But the other thing that we did do in the back of the property is on the original plans from last month, there were 3 windows in the back of the property. We've now reduced that to 2 windows in the back of the property. And one of those windows would actually just be in the bathroom. So on the right side of the property where I really do have direct neighbors, we'd have no windows. And on the rear side of the property where I do have a neighbor, but he's actually topographically significantly down and would have 0 direct light, we've gone from 3 windows in the back to 2 windows in the back. And one of those windows in the back would actually just be in the bathroom. So there would only be 1 window in the back that would be on at any time if anybody was in the rec room. All the other windows in that structure would either be on the left side, which just pours onto my internal part of the patio, or on the front, which goes to my front driveway, which is substantially away from everybody on the planet. Also on last month's meeting, there were concerns, not concerns, but asked if we would add to the plans for water, since we're going to be, built a big structure where the water would go. So on the plan, I can share a screen if you want, or you can look whichever you prefer to do. I'm prepared to share a screen if you like, but looking on the front page survey, if you look towards the back, there are now proposed, what did they call them? Coltex, proposed Coltex. So 2 of them where just behind the building, behind the garden area, and where the shed bar is all the way on the right side of the property. If you're looking at the survey, there's a Coltex there. So we did.
Actually, could it put up a share screen, please?
Sure.
The public can't see it.
Okie dokie finoki. Can you see this? Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Great. So this is the current garage structure right here, these slanted lines. This is the proposed increase of the garage that would then attach to the house. This is just a blow up of it, just so you can kind of see just the back area. So here are the 2, I guess you call them Coltex or dry wells that we'd be putting onto the property that don't possibly exist now. One of the things that we did find out from the last meeting to this meeting, since you guys asked to do this, is we went out and kind of see where the water was going now. And there actually is a drain pipe that actually goes from this section of the house, no, sorry, from this section of the house and goes across and actually ends kind of on this corner. And it must have been there for 30 years. So actually you can see it, 4-inch PVC that's here. So that's going to be eliminated because we really don't want water going onto our neighbor's property. So all this water that comes from the garage and everything, there's not going to be any piping at all that goes here. So this 4-inch PVC goes bye-bye, and all the water is going to be going into these areas here. And where's the culvert over here? Oh, here it is, Coltex, and over here. So we're going to take care of all water that comes from this small building over here. And again, this is a pre-existing building, so we're adding this section. But all the water here, we're going to make sure we put in some very large size dry wells. And I'll probably even do bigger than what's on here because I'm kind of a water fanatic. So we're going to take care of any sort of water issues, which is what you guys had asked us to put on. Also from the last meeting, which you asked that I put on, hold on a second, I want to make sure I'm on the right one here. You asked if we would add where the utilities are on the property. So we did add those lines here of where the utilities come into the property. So all that's been added to the survey. And again, the other section I showed you was just kind of a blown up version of this. So again, there's no windows on this side, and there's going to be one window over here, one window over here, and I have those drawings too that I can show you. Culverts are here, not culverts, Coltex are here, the dry wells. So the only new windows that don't currently exist now would be these windows here facing this way, which doesn't bother anybody, and obviously windows this way, which would be pouring onto my patio. So let me just show you that. Okay, so here's the rear view. Give me 1 second so I can go to the right screen. Oop. 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 Okay. Oh, so I'm sorry. So this is the back side. So this is, I'm sorry, this is the right side. Yeah, so this is the side that faces my patio. This is the opposite side. So this is the opposite side that actually face my neighbors. So you can actually see there are no windows in this structure at all, 0. So there's not going to be any light going to our neighbors to the right side, which is actually where my direct neighbors are. So we're going to be shedding no windows there. And see if this is what I want it to be. Yes, so this is the other one. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure I'm showing. I don't know, I might have saved the same thing twice. I'd have to go to the full plans, which I can do that. Oh, and then also just to kind of show one more thing. Just always wanting to make sure I'm showing you guys the right plan. So the bathroom used to be on this side. This is the right side facing the neighbors. So right now, this is all just going to be storage and closets. So there's not going to be any windows here. And on this back side of the house is literally just going to be 2 windows. One window that comes up from where the staircase is coming to the 2nd floor. And then the other window is literally just going to be in the bathroom. So this light obviously is not going to be on all the time. This will be an occasional window. So all the windows for this structure either go to the patio area or to the front area. No windows here and only 2 windows here. Any questions?
It'd be nicer with windows, but.
Yeah, but I'm also, you know, I've been on a few of these things, and I always have a concern for light on the other side. I mean, if I needed to put windows here, and just put
unless you plan on putting spotlights in those windows, it's really not an issue.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Unless you're planning on putting spotlights in the windows.
I know, but I don't really need them. I mean, there's plenty of light here, plenty of light here. The other thing I was talking to the builder about, if we really think we need more light, we may consider putting in some skylights. So one of the things that's not on here that we're still talking about is that, you know, we may just decide to put maybe a couple of skylights here and maybe a skylight here or here in case we want more light. And if we do that, again, that will have 0 effect to our neighbors at all. If we just wanted to kind of add some light, we're still feeling it's going to be pretty bright because it's going to be, you know, 4 windows on this side and 3 windows on this side. And this is really where all the fun is really going to be anyway. And you're never going to have too much storage. So I don't really mind having a wall of storage with no windows. That's fine. I'm just really not interested in bothering neighbors. I just kind of want to be able to do our own thing. The other thing is that I know that you guys received, so I'll just bring it up, was an email letter when I sent the letters out to everybody that my rear neighbor was concerned about drainage. This is where that PVC pipe is actually probably is going to the upper right corner of his property, which I'll show you what that is because I took pictures of it. But that's going to go bye-bye because we're putting all that water into the into those dry wells. So that's going to go away. So the drainage will absolutely go away. He did ask about screening, asked if I would add other screening And I know when you just kind of look at a flat plan of people's houses, it may seem like he needs it, but he really doesn't for A, because I have very limited windows, number one. But two, if I'm going too fast or too slow, just tell me. I actually took pictures. So this is the right hand, the rear right hand corner of the property. So over here are those neighbors. Because he's talking about that these white pines just kind of end right before my property. Well, the white pines kind of end here. There's not that much space between the end and the white pines. And I actually took a Google shot. God, I love that Google, huh? So this is kind of where his house is. These were all the huge, I don't know, 25, 30-foot white pines are. This is the only little section that doesn't have the white pines. This is kind of the bigger area than a building. So there's going to be one window here, which goes right into the white pines. The other window is kind of going to go here, which again, as you said, is not a spotlight. I'm not really too sure where he could see it, because the other thing that I did was, and my wife almost freaking killed me, so we're almost here for a divorce. I climbed up on the ladder just so I can get to the top first, I'll call it the first floor or the top of the roof of the first floor. And as you can see going out, you can't even see the other house at all. And this is winter. So there's no leaves on the tree. You can't even see this guy from my house, because topographically he goes way down. You can see these are very tall trees, but you can see you can't even see half of them because topographically. So what I did is I walked all the way back to my bushes down here, which I have to go downhill first in order to go to the bushes. And even from the downhill part of the bushes, the only thing you see is his driveway and his roof. So I know if you look on a flat plane, it may look like that one or two of these windows may be going into his house. It'll be impossible for him to see anything more than just maybe a glimmer of light coming through. Well, again, this is the bathroom light, and that would be the regular room light. That's it. So I don't really see that I need to do any other sort of landscape shielding. He can't see anything. There's nothing for him to see. But the drainage really does come from through. As a matter of fact, you can even see a little PVC pipe clean out here. And I always thought it went down into my area or a dry well. But when I followed it, I actually found that it did go to a corner, and that's a no-no. So that's going away. We're taking care of that, so he'll have no water. So I'm definitely taking care of the drainage, but he won't have any light issues. So I think I got all the questions that you guys were asking me for last time, unless I forgot something.
Okay, Valerie, Kathy, what's our status on this point?
This has to go to the zoning board first, which I believe it's on the zoning board's agenda on Monday, and then it would come back to this board.
Okay, so are there any members of the public who want to speak on this? I think Mark was the only person here, right?
Oh, also, and in your package, you do have letters from my direct right neighbors, which are the ones that if any light would ever hit at all, except I have no windows on that side, you have letters from both of those neighbors that said, go for it, Mark, do whatever you want to do. Because I actually gave him, pages from the plans and all this stuff with it. So it wasn't just a letter. I gave him a whole presentation, which was also part of my packet. And both the right neighbors, if it was going to impact anybody at all, it would be them. And you have letters of go get a Mark from both those neighbors.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board at this time? Jim?
I tend to agree that screening isn't really necessary in the back, and it has nothing to do with the windows. And I'm comfortable with the application.
Gareth?
I think it looks good.
Carolyn?
I'm good with it.
Donna?
I'm good with it also. I just wanted to comment on his, the trees that, so, Mr. Seiden, the trees those pine trees are on your property, right?
You're talking about the big white pines?
Yeah.
No, the big white pines are actually on my neighbor's property. I'd say the trunk of the tree is probably, if I had to guess, 2 to 3 feet away from my property line. So they're technically his white pines. Which I've always, it is what it is. I wish I had them because I'd manicure them more, but.
Well, you have room to plant.
Yeah. But they're actually his. I mean, what we did, I don't know if
I don't have any problem with it. I think it's screened enough. It would be better if the screening was on your property, but
yeah, unfortunately not. The only thing that I did to kind of add a little screening for myself was, you probably can't even, no, you can't even see it. You can't see it because you can't see it because it's winter, but right over here, you could probably barely see it. We've got a really gorgeous Japanese maple that I kind of planted a little further on my line to kind of block this whole area when I'm on my patio this way, looking this way. So no one is actually here between my garage and property. I mean, nobody on the planet. So all the view kind of comes from this direction this way. And I actually planted a really large, very nice Japanese maple here. So when you're really looking at this corner, it's actually much prettier. You just can't see it here because you just can't. Oh, here it is. There it is. There's the Japanese maple. So when we're kind of here on our patio and we're kind of looking, because there is a little gap, the only thing we see is a really beautiful Japanese maple here.
Okay, so the only thing we have to do is wait for this to come back from the ZBA. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so at this point, we have to adjourn this hearing.
We have someone from the public that has their hand up. Lauren?
Lauren is muted.
Lauren's on mute.
Sorry, that was an accident. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your hand was raised. Okay.
Okay, so do we need a
No, you're just
Sandy?
adjourning it for the next meeting. Or I would just
Okay,
advise it.
can I have
delayed to
a
February
motion to
3rd.
that effect?
I make the motion.
Thank you, Donna.
I'll second.
Thank you, Carolyn. Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Gareth?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Okay, we'll see you back here soon.
What's that, February?
3rd.
I just can't wait. See you guys then.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the presentation from River Knoll, Stony Lodge property, 40 Croton Dam Road, preliminary layout plan. Again, for the benefit of the public members, I'm sorry, I'm hearing echo on my system. For the benefit of the public who are present for this, feel free to go and watch it on YouTube afterwards. We're not taking.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not a public hearing at this time, so we're not taking comments on this particular matter. But feel free, of course, to submit any questions or comments on in writing, and actually that would be more efficient for us if there's a lot of questions and comments from the public. Okay, so is the applicant here?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to provide the public as well as the planning board a little bit of background as to where things are and where things are probably going to go in terms of process? Or would you prefer to?
It probably would be wise considering how complex this whole matter has been for the past period of time.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Appreciate the opportunity, though, to make the presentation and then talk about the process.
That's fine, we can do that as well.
Yeah. Because, yeah, that would lead right into that, Valerie. Sandy, I want to share my screen. How do I do that? Just click the share screen button. Yes?
Yes, you can just share your screen.
You see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. You enlarge it. All right. We put together this PowerPoint just to go through. That's the top of the hill on the site where the hospital sits, and it has views of the Hudson. So we wanted to talk about where we've been. We have a timeline to go through that. And then also talk about the new plan, and then what we believe as will be the process subsequently and the zoning process. So this is a timeline just to refresh everybody's notion. Not everybody on the planning board was present at the beginning, but we started our conversations back in the fall of 2014.
May I ask if you could make that screen larger? Because we're seeing, yeah, that'd be great. Is like slide view?
Is that better?
You can actually make it into slide view, yeah.
Yeah, slide view would be better.
Slide view.
I'm not sure how to do that. Is
Sure.
it slideshow at the top?
Slideshow, yeah, that would do it.
At the top.
At the
Yeah.
menu, top.
There, okay. And then hit what?
From current slide.
Current
There.
slide.
Current slide, yeah.
Go from current slide? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you are, right? Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, much better. Thank you.
So, can you see my cursor? Yes?
Yes.
So, yeah, we began discussions in the fall of 2014. And also joining me is Wayne Spector, Land Use Council, and also the owner of the property, Carter Potash. We're both on this Zoom meeting tonight. And then in 2015, we had discussions on providing environmental assessment form, which we did prepare. And that was submitted at the end of 2015. And a new administration came in 16. And we were requested to do a full EIS with a full scope, which was completed in 2016. We then prepared the first draft of the environmental impact statement. It's about a 1,000-page document, and that was delivered in February. The second draft with comments mid-year, and then the third draft end of 17. The fourth draft came into beginning of 18, and then the DI, then it was accepted as complete. We had some hearings and comment that was incorporated, and then the final notice of completion in March of 18. And then we gave you the first draft of the final that summer. And then the second draft was provided in the spring. We had gotten into final discussions on things like what the rec fee would be. There was, as sort of part of the final understanding, would we do certain things on Croton Dam Road, providing guardrails, et cetera, down at this, I guess that would be the eastern or western end of it. And then there was a request for a community garden over on the Narragansett side of the site. We began at that time drafting the statement of findings, and then for a variety of reasons, we stopped last year in the fall. And so there was a lot of discussion late fall going into the beginning of 220 through 220 as to, what it was political. And we presented a project of 155 units reduced. And then because of a lot of reasons and just feedback from the neighbors, from the various public hearings, et cetera, the thought of having an age-restricted project of townhouse style, and let me get into that had private entrances was something that sounded appealing. And just to once again give people some background, there are all of these buildings that exist on the site today. The site has large areas of blacktop at the southern end. Pershing homes are here. All of these buildings up against 2nd Avenue. And then the entire top of the hill is all excavated with parking lots, all been changed, man-made changes. And then if you go back even 100 years, all of this area was mowed. So it's been a highly disturbed site for many years. A lot of it's grown in because of lack of maintenance, but it's always been a site that has been, these are some of the buildings. They've been vacant for 6 or 7 years. These are up near Grandview. This is the back side of the buildings alongside Grandview. So it's a site with buildings that can't be resuscitated. Okay. And so when it was in operation, its last full year was 2011. It had 3 shifts: morning, early evening around dinner time, and then late evening. It employed about 200 full-time and part-time employees, 61 beds, had social workers coming in and out all day long, and it housed mostly inner-city adolescents. And the taxes paid today are actually less than $100,000 for that 28-acre site, et cetera. And there were all sorts of ambulances and healthcare workers and emergency workers coming in all the time. So this is a plan that was done by Toll Brothers going back to 1986 or 96, I'm sorry, but this site has been the site of numerous applications to the town. This was about 120 townhouses planned, was proposed to the town. This was our initial proposal that we made back in the fall of 2014 and early 2015. And we were talking about 239 units in 5 buildings, essentially double building here, double building here. And then we reduced it to 3 buildings, 188 units, and then we collapsed into 1 building. That was the current plan that you have before you. 188 units. And then again, in response to public comments, and to some degree also thinking that private entry buildings, as opposed to common entry buildings, would be more appealing to the public because of COVID. We're now proposing a townhouse project, which leaves about 45% of the site as green. The street coming in off of Croton Dam Road follows the same contours as the existing road. Would come back, sweep behind the building, essentially double-loaded townhouses, 2-story townhouses, 1- and 2-bedroom townhouses. And then another road sweeping in front, again, along the same contours of the existing road here. And then just sweeping up to the top. All of these units would have views out to the Hudson, which is to the right side. There will be a series of stormwater basins that are swales. They will all have, sustainable grasses in them, but there will be 3 here in the front, and then 1 down in the lower. That's actually the southeast corner, and 1 in the northeast corner. And all of those storm basins will help improve the stormwater conditions that currently run off into these homes along Pershing. So the design that we're contemplating is this, be hardy plank siding, very straightforward, handsome designs, probably some with these picket fences. This would be an interior unit flanked by 2 exterior units. Most of the units will have ground floor master suites, as this will be, we're proposing a seniors community, 55 plus age restricted community. And some of the materials, you know, all quality materials, GAF Timberline roofing, the interiors, hardwood floors, Kohler, Bass, Viking, Sub-Zero quality appliances and quartz counters. And then some of the details of the project. So the 2-bedroom units will range about 1,600 to 1,700 square feet livable area, plus basements of around 850 feet. The 3 bedrooms will range 850 to 1,950 square feet of livable area, plus 2 car garages as well. They will be in the 2s. There'll be 2 full baths, a front powder room, and the 3 full baths, a front powder room. All the units will have dens or offices on the living levels. In the basement, we will also have the ability to have optioned a further office, because we're now finding that couples, particularly empty nesters or retirees, like to have their own offices, and the increase in work from home, which will only get more so. Most of the units have first floors on the, masters on the first floor. We will also have in all of the units the ability to have a gym on the lower level, fireplaces, and then the pricing for the ones will be, for the 2 bedrooms will be $750 to $850, and for the 3s, mid-8s to mid-9s. There'll be bluestone patios, and then you will have the option to have an elevator, particularly for this this buyer profile. And then the community will have at the entrance a community room with an outdoor pool adjacent to it, a whirlpool, changing rooms, a club room with a kitchen, and then a larger fitness room with state-of-the-art equipment, walking paths on site that will connect to the Veterans Park and area trails. And then, as part of our design, we're getting increasingly into the issue of sustainability, what kind of materials we use, rain gardens in the stormwater swales, using native grasses and wildflowers. All of the property we buffered to neighbors, and then obviously lighting is very, as in your prior application, making sure lighting doesn't disturb neighbors and is energy efficient. Then, so this will be what's known as a housing for old persons community, 55 plus community. It's an HUD regulated community. You will have to file with the State Attorney General's office, et cetera. 80% of the units must have an occupant 55 years of age or older. And we obviously have to publish all of the policies and adhere to them, and there are periodic reviews by the state. It will be professionally managed, so all the exterior maintenance of the homes and the site will be done with a professional management company. And then, and with COVID, we're increasingly getting into, okay, what processes, what construction processes can we implement HEPA quality filters on HVAC systems, low, in common areas, wall finishes that have smooth surfaces. We're looking at in elevators, well, not so much in this building, but we are looking at all different types of ways of cleaning elevators with radiant light. But it's become a big issue in the multifamily world that I exist in. So, so the zoning, so the comprehensive plan at the outset back in 2015 was adjusted to address this site in particular. And one of the things was done to adjust this comprehensive plan to address this site. And it does call for higher density development. And what we will do, proposing to do, is to employ the current MF zone. The prior plan, we were creating a new MF2 zone, but not the case here. We will use the existing MF zone as our proposal. And we will, we're proposing to revise the FEIS, which included a very extensive section on analyzing alternatives. We got into analyzing 10 alternatives with you, with the prior planning consultant, David Stallman. We spent almost a year and a half going back and forth on various different zoning, existing town zoning applications to the site using single family, multifamily, et cetera. And we had 2 and other apartment complexes. There were 2 townhouse concepts, one a cluster and one a conventional. This one conventional, and then the cluster using the MF zone is this concept, and we were showing 132 units using that. And once again, this was a process that we went through very laboriously with David Stallman and the planning board and town board at that time to include these concepts in the back of the DEIS and FEIS, and those are all online. You can check those out. So we, so we're not planning, we're talking about 98 units, not 132. We're talking about something much less than what was proposed in these alternatives. So the major impacts that we always come up in these types of projects are, okay, what is the tax impact? What is traffic impact? Those seem to be the 2 big ones, and certainly the case here. In this instance, in this column, the current Stony Lodge Hospital is throwing off about $98,000, and the ownership thinks that's going to drop further. The multifamily plan that we proposed for the past 6 years in the EIS with the tax assessor was to show approximately $1 million or 5,000 a unit. And now the new townhouse plan, it'll be somewhere around $2 million or around 20,000 a unit. Again, 98 units with an increase over the current taxes of almost $2 million. Then traffic. So the Stony Lodge property, again, all this is in the EIS documents, peak weekday morning entering and exiting threw off 51 cars, peak weekday PM threw off 60 cars entering and exiting. The multifamily plan in the EIS was, and we went out and surveyed my traffic engineers 5 different times the local streets at great expense, and these were the numbers morning and evening. And then the new townhouse plan using similar traffic generation figures for seniors, we expect will be somewhere around 48, similar to what the existing Stony Lodge was throwing out, and similar, actually less than in the evening, the townhouse plan. And that's because that's typically spread over a longer period of time at night. So the reduction in trips between our prior proposal and the current proposal is, and we're even more or less than what the Stony Lodge threw off. And these are the various intersections that were looked at. You know, this is kind of detailed, you probably don't want to go through. So one of the other things we looked at was community character, and the adjoining properties on Pershing, along Narragansett and Grandview up till the third house in off of Croton Dam Road are all 5,000 square foot lots. It's very small lot homes. And then this small piece here in the town of Ossining is our 7.5 or 7,500 square foot minimum lot sizes. So if you do some simple math and you say to yourself, okay, we have almost 18 acres on our property, 18 acres. And if you were divided through by the 5,000 square foot lot adjacent density in the village, you would come up with 156 lots. Obviously, that doesn't take out things like wetlands and various setbacks, et cetera. But just simple math, that's what you would come up with. And similarly, if you used the 7,500 square foot lot size of the town, you would come up with 104 lots. Once again, not taking out setbacks, et cetera. However, we are proposing 98 lots, but it leaves about 45% of the site as green, almost half. And that's really the big part of it. Wayne, you're on. Do you have anything you want to add? Wayne Spector? Somewhere out there. I guess not. Does he have the ability, Sandy, to speak? Wayne? Fell asleep, I think. All right. Guess not. Can you hear me, Valerie? Did you want to add something?
Wayne actually has his hand up, so.
Oh, he does?
Yeah. I think.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
I was having some technical issues. I think Glenn did an excellent job of explaining the exciting new changes and proposals, which really generated and evolved from the process, which was quite a long ordeal in the 6-year process. And many on the consultant side, I think there are some new eyes to see this as well. But on the zoning side, the main thing is obviously the change from the need to create a new zone, which was somewhat controversial at the time and created a lot of thought and concern about potentially the new zone being applicable to other properties. Since in using this the MF zone, which allows for this density of development, it takes away that side of this process. It's no longer necessary to do an analysis of how how this could possibly impact other large properties in the town. And it also addresses the issue of on the density side about the the questions and concerns about creating a much more dense zone than had existed in the past, since this is a a zone which is which is used in various other locations. And it should be just a matter of obviously applying to the town board as part of this process. Once we're through this, once we re-up the seeker process, complete what was started with adequate supplementation regarding any newly identified impacts, and then moving it forward once again to the town board for review of the zoning, the rezoning of the property to the MF zone, and then coming back to this board for planning review as well. Obviously, there's a lot of work yet to be done in the design phase, but I think that a lot's been done, and I think the explanations really are spectacular regarding the positive impacts, or I should say, large reductions in impacts from the originally identified impacts. So we do look forward to moving the process forward, to providing the adequate information that's necessary to complete SECRA, and going on to the next step at this point. This has been long in the making, and I think we feel, my client feels, that this is something that the town will benefit from, and it addresses many of the concerns that were raised by members of the public in the initial phase of this process. So thank you.
I'll add just a
Okay.
couple more things before you guys speak. There have been a couple of others, 2 or 3 others, senior or age-restricted projects throughout the county, and they've met with tremendous demand. There's a very significant, aging baby boomer, empty nester that doesn't want to have a large house any longer and wants something that's much simpler and more carefree, but also wants to be in the neighborhood that they raised their kids in and where their friends reside, but also wants something that's new. The newest buildings in this area may be the ones on the waterfront. I'm not really sure, but most of the townhouses here, as one of your earlier applicants indicated, is 35 years old. And they've changed. They've changed a lot. The spacing has changed, the sizing of the rooms, the bathrooms, the amount of closet space, they've changed. They've gotten much different. And the townhouse of today is much different than one of 35 years ago. The other thing I wanted to point out is that we've tried very hard, you can see my cursor, to try and maintain as best we could greenery along the front of Croton Dam Road, where we have the beautiful current meadow. And while there will be swales, these will be just that, swales that will be filled with indigenous plant types. They will be landscaped. We also, today, there are buildings that situate throughout this area, a former doctor's house, administrative building, maintenance shed, 4 or 5 buildings down in here, and all parking areas. These will all be green now. So the homes that are on Pershing and 2nd Avenue will have in their backyards greenery. And then all the way down here into Narragansett will all be green. And then we will also create a very large, substantial green buffer along the Pershing, the Grandview homes' backyards. Today there exists a building that was used as a recreation building for the hospital that literally sits along this edge here, and that will be taken down and create a green buffer. That's all I have.
Okay, so Valerie and Kathy, what is the status of this at this point, procedurally?
Sure. Why don't I give a little bit of a summary as to where things are, and Kathy and I spoke, and this is where we think the next steps should be. So basically, this application is still undergoing the State Environmental Quality Review process, which is the SEQR process that Glenn was referring to. So as he also mentioned, that this last official SEQR document that was received by the Planning Board and was beginning its review was in March in 2019. So because of the revised plan that we see tonight, this plan is actually very different, as you can see, from the original plan. And as a result, we believe that the applicant is going to have to undertake what we call a supplemental environmental impact statement, which is also known as, they call it, an acronym is an SEIS. And this is basically required when there's a change in circumstances which arises that will result or may result in a significant environmental impact that has not yet been evaluated. And since this plan differs greatly from the original plan, which is technically your change in circumstances, the environmental impacts to the revised plan will need to be evaluated. The applicant will be able to utilize existing data and relevant studies to assess the impacts of the revised plan based upon work that he's already created as part of the DEIS and the prior FEIS. The first step in developing an SEIS is a process called a scope, which basically the scope is an outline which will define what areas need to be analyzed as part of the SEIS process. And once the draft scope is developed, it will be available and open for public comment. That draft scope is typically developed by the applicant. They would provide it to you, the planning board. You can revise that. And then once you're comfortable with what is being proposed to be analyzed, That will go out for public comment. The public can weigh in and provide additional comments on some other avenues that they feel that maybe are missing in the scope. The board can take that into consideration, and then once the final scope gets adopted, that information in the scope will be ultimately what is presented and analyzed in the SCIS. So the first step right now is for the for the applicant to actually create the draft scope for the planning board to review. And I'll mention that an SEIS at times really is a little bit more focused than a DEIS because at this point we probably already know some of the main key environmental topic areas that were of concern last time around, you know, specifically dealing with school children, community character, traffic, affordable housing. So those are the types of, you know, elements that we'll definitely want to make sure get brought into the overall scope for the SEIS, as well as some of the other additional items, like, for example, any other environmental issues, like, for example, open space and the like.
Okay. Kathy, anything to add?
No, that Valerie did a great job explaining the process with the SEIS.
Dan, do you have anything to say anything at this point?
Oh, no, I have nothing at this point. Obviously, we'll review the technical elements as the application advances.
Okay. Members of the board, do you have any questions or comments at this time? Jim?
How exactly is the age restriction enforced or put in place?
I'm sorry, Jim, are you asking me, Glenn?
Anybody that's got the answer.
What's the question? Again, I didn't hear you.
When approaching one of the residential units, how is the age restriction? How does that come into play?
Well, it's part of all of the offering memoranda, which has to get approved by the AG's office. So, you know, and it's periodically checked by HUD. So, yeah, it's very rigorously checked, and
HUD does or the state audits, and there's also going to be a management element who's going to be directly involved in ensuring compliance. It's a constant process because of the, you know, whenever a unit is going to be placed on the market, any potential buyer is going to have to be reviewed to make sure there's compliance, you know, as far as the percentage, and also to make sure that at least one member of the family is 55 or over within the unit, within the buying unit as well. So there will be multiple levels of review and management to ensure the compliance on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Jim, when I was in Scarsdale, we did a condominium which was age restricted, and yeah, I mean, there's never really been an issue. You have to, it's part of the offering, and so and you literally can't sell it to somebody who doesn't qualify. The state does keep pretty good records, and the management company does a good job too, because that's, you know, they're required to under the offering plans.
There's also going to be, these are in the form of restrictive covenants as well. So there'll also be title companies, title insurance companies. They're going to have to insure title, and in doing so, they're going to have to also make sure that there's no issue as far as the purchaser qualifying. So there really are multiple layers of oversight which are going to come into play.
Thank you.
Carolyn, do you have anything to add?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So are there, under the town law, you're required to do a certain amount of affordable units in here? How many would there be?
Yeah, we believe so. 10.
Okay.
It would be 10.
10 units.
Yeah.
Donna, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
Yes, I had, Gareth, you want to go first? Go ahead.
Okay, Gareth.
Go ahead, Donna.
Oh, okay. So when you had your chart up there, it said that 80% of the units had to be 55, have someone 55 or older in them. Is that, did I read that correctly?
Yeah, yes.
That's
so
under
that means-
HUD, that's correct.
Yeah, so 20% of the units could have people younger, and then you're saying only one person has to be 55 and older, correct?
One owner, that's correct.
Right. And it's 3 bedrooms and you're putting a den in there. That's a lot of space. So with COVID, we're bringing that up. So I can bring up some examples too. I know of younger people moving back in with parents. So did you also say that it can't be minors living there, or is there any restriction at all?
There's no restriction. Minors can live there. That's correct.
Okay. All right, so that should be considered, right, with school-aged children? Possibly?
Yeah, the chances of there being school-aged children are, de minimis by virtue of the 55+ requirement. The typical age of buyers in these projects tends to be mid-60s to late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
So very remote. And there's also a marketing aspect to these things as well. Who you're marketing to, another product that's kind of less restricted is age targeted. That's gaining, popularity for older people as well. But very few, there will be very, very unlikely to be any, meaningfully young people here. Just will not attract them if they know it's a 55+ project.
Okay. So I did look through, because I wasn't involved last time, but I did look through. Sandy gave me your packet from before, and I did see the alternatives. Would that apply to this? Like, we're still going to be looking at alternatives? Because when I looked at them, it didn't seem to in any way consider the slopes or the wetland or any of those things. It looked like it was just put on a flat piece of property.
No, this has actually been very rigorously looked at in terms of slopes, setbacks from wetlands, the provision of wetland basins, steep slopes, all of those things. We start with a map that includes all of those things and then put in the buildings. But we took a very, very hard look at all of those things, and also making sure that the slopes of the roads conform to town code, and also the turnarounds for emergency vehicles.
Don, I think he's referring to his current plan. A lot of times in alternatives, when they do an alternative as part of an environmental impact statement, it's just looking at how that alternative would more or less fit onto a site, and then looking at the overall impacts for that. So in terms of this SEIS, there probably would be maybe an alternative or two we'll take a look at, but that will really depend on, ultimately what the planning board is looking at to potentially tweak to this particular plan itself.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I'm not really sure, where you are on this, but I did notice that, like, your existing tree inventory was really less than satisfactory. Like one tree was listed as deciduous. So it didn't really seem to be very in depth. So I didn't know if that would be something that you would be able to.
We had a bot go out and tag all of the trees of certain diameters, and they were surveyed.
Yes, and then that list doesn't, for me, if you're going to do a tree survey, it should have accurate information, and it didn't seem to be very complete. Stating that something was a deciduous tree is not a very complete identification. So now it seems that there would be, looking at both the previous plan and this plan, there's going to be a lot more disturbance to the trees. So I would hope that you would include that information.
We can talk about it. I mean, there aren't There, on the east side of the site, there are trees. On the whole front of the site, there are very few trees. On the site near Narragansett, there are very few trees. On the southern edge of the site, it's mostly parking lots with very few trees as it sits. But we can take another look at that. The top of the site has, you know, just a handful of trees because those are where all of the buildings are in the parking lots. But happy to walk it with you. You know, we will be replanting trees and creating buffers as part of our project.
Great, that'd be great. So, and just that if they could be, what we're asking people is to use the scientific Latin and not just the common name, so that it's a little easier to understand what something actually is. So that would be good. Thank you for considering that.
Sure.
Gareth?
Yeah, so I had a couple questions about the road. I'm wondering whether you anticipate the roads to be public roads, Town of Ossining, or private? And if private, are you anticipating the community to be gated? And I'm asking these questions because I'm concerned about the loss of one of the most compelling features of your original plan, which was pedestrian access from Croton Dam Road through to Narragansett. And if these roads are going to be public, I can see that you could retain that and people could just walk along the road and exit through, you know, I think you're showing it as an emergency exit on the upper part. But if it's going to be a private area, private road.
Here's the prior plan, Gareth. What on this plan, what were you thinking in terms of walking through?
Yeah, remember we had you had agreed to do a walking path that would connect Croton Dam Road to Narragansett.
Mm-hmm.
That would be publicly accessible.
Okay.
I'm surprised that you
look
don't
at
remember
it.
that.
There's, you know, there is a walkway. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
There's a walkway that was planned to go down to Narragansett, and with Veterans Park is up here.
Right.
You know, putting a walkway down here is not something that would be difficult to do. But okay, so the new plan, we also will have a walkway. It's not shown here, but it would likely follow here. Whether or not we would have another walk over here, you know, we can talk about it. It goes behind private homes and it goes behind the homes on Grandview. Is there a lot of foot traffic that you would expect to walk down Croton Dam Road?
Honestly, I would not expect a lot, but making it possible is consistent with a longer-term view of you know, Town of Ossining for pedestrian, improving pedestrian access and bicycle access. And if there was a shortcut, for lack of a better term, from Croton Dam Road through to the Veterans Park area, I think that would be a community, to the community's benefit. That was something I liked about the previous plan. We had talked about it publicly at that time, although it may not be shown in its completion on the diagram you just showed.
Well, the Grandview entrance is, you see my cursor, is right about here.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, kids, I assume it'd be children walking along Grandview to Narragansett would be not dissimilar than somebody coming behind all of these houses. So I'm just looking at this thing practically. I don't know what's to be gained necessarily from that.
Yeah, I get that, but I was envisioning that the pedestrian walkway was going to be on the downhill side over to the right. starting from there and then going around and through, around sort of the perimeter. Would something like that be possible? And in that case, it would constitute a significant reduction in the walking distance.
Well, this is the prior plan, Gareth.
Yeah, it's obviously
my
not
recollection
showing,
is pretty good as to whether or not we talked about any walkways going this way, I guess is what you would be thinking. And there were no conversations like that.
No, there were conversations like that.
No, what there was a conversation of having a walkway go down Croton Dam Road here, cross over, I can't remember the name of the street down here, and to go down to whatever the intersection. There was a conversation about a walkway. We met with DPW, we met with Dan Ciarcia, who's on the, and we looked at the practicality of that. We looked at the difficulty of acquiring rights of way of all of the homes. And we also looked at the very severe, there's almost a hairpin curve down here. And would it make sense for kids to be walking along that very, and we met actually with the neighbors. There's a, there's a neighborhood, a small cluster. Damn, why is that popping up?
Yeah, I recall that, but that's a
They
different.
didn't want it, but there was no this way for sure.
Yes, there was. I'm not going to go back 3 years through the video, but it was also tied in with discussions about the possibility of using what you're showing here as the preserved meadow, as retaining that as a possibility for sledding hill, which is the way.
This over here was used as toboggan hill right here.
Right, right.
It's traditionally been a toboggan run, and we said we'd be okay with it.
Right. And it was part of that discussion that the walkway going all the way around to the right and out was in place. It doesn't look, it is of little value to argue this right now, but in my mind, that is something that makes this current plan less compelling than the original plan, which I liked. I know a lot of people did not like it. I liked it except for its traffic impact. But anyway, I would like to open the discussion for improving pedestrian walking through this, if that is, if there would be any possibility of that. Or, as I asked earlier, do you anticipate this being a gated community?
Well, that can be part of the scope, right? So that can clearly pedestrian walkways and pedestrian access can be incorporated into the scope of what would be studied in the SEIS.
There are legal issues, of course, with any kind of pedestrian use of private property, in terms of who's responsible for it, liability issues. I mean, these things would have to be looked at, and the town would have to obviously be part of the discussion if this is indeed turns into a public access or walkway. So there are a lot of issues, safety issues that have to be looked at. So it's a complicated question to do that, to create on private property. Something that you're suggesting. Certainly, it can be discussed, but like I said, there are a number of people have to be at the table in order to get that done, if it can be done from a design standpoint.
Well, why don't we consider, clearly we'll bring this into the scope, and we'll make note of that into pedestrian access for the site.
As far as the roads becoming public roads, I mean, obviously that's something that the town would have a say in as well, and I suspect that they would prefer that the roads not be publicly dedicated. That's just a suspicion on my part.
We haven't decided, on that. We're going to have some kind of, entrance feature like trellising, something to make it, beautiful. But whether or not we dedicate the roads or not, we're leaning towards dedicating them and making them public.
Sure.
We don't necessarily see a compelling reason to have this as a private, place. So that's kind of where we're leaning right now, Gareth.
Thank you. That would, I would be very much in favor of that if that is possible. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so I don't have any questions at this time. I mean, the only comment I would have is that we would probably have saved a lot of efforts if the number had come down to 98 units back several years ago. But be that as it may, Valerie, so at this point, we just wait for the applicant to fill out the new form for us to consider, correct?
Right, so there'll be a scope, which is basically an outline of what they would be studying in the supplemental environmental impact statement.
Right, and does the applicant have any idea of when that would be accomplished?
We can do it very quickly, very quickly. And I think the challenge, not really a challenge, the issue is that the EIS today, as I pointed out with, as one example, the traffic study, it's been exhaustively studied, the traffic impact. So now we know, and that was for a project that's much larger, which would have much more peak hour impact. And now we're going to a project that is fewer units, but also seniors units who, many of them travel off peak. So we know coming out of the box that this is going to be much less. And so the question is, as an example, what are we talking about? An entirely new analysis, or are we talking about essentially embellishing what's there as an example? Then fiscal is pretty straightforward, fairly easy to do. But we want to be able to use the existing document because the existing document's been produced over 7 years.
Right, so I think, again, as part of a supplemental environmental impact statement, you'll provide us the scope. There's, as I said before, you can utilize some of the analysis and the material in the original DEIS that's still applicable to this, that would be applicable to the supplemental. It can be, a supplemental can be targeted and focused specifically on environmental topics of, that would need to be looked at as part of this overall new plan. What I would advise is, why don't you put together what you believe would be the environmental topics that need to be studied, and then I can work with the board along with Kathy and Dan, and we can advise the board, and the board can review and then add anything else that they feel that is necessary to be studied.
That's very fair. Thank you. Sure. Appreciate
By the way, do we have a copy of this PowerPoint uploaded on our website?
No, I'm happy to do that.
Great. If you could give it to Sandy so that she can have it uploaded, that'd be great. I think the public would like to see this new design that you have.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll work with Sandy on that.
Okay. What else do we have to do at this point, Valerie? Kathy?
I mean, so we really can't take any action until we have submission of the draft scope by the applicant.
Okay. Very good. So we'll wait for the applicant to accomplish that. So I guess that's enough for now. We'll hope to see you soon.
Very good. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, we have on the next item, we have a request from MGM Subdivision for another extension of time. Do we have any objections to giving them that extension of time? This is for 5 Hawks Avenue, requesting a 90-day extension of time to complete their resolution item.
I don't have any problems with it.
I'm inclined to just give it to them. Carolyn, Gareth,
Yeah, no
Donna?
problem.
No problem.
Okay, can I have a resolution? Does this need a resolution?
Just a motion to grant the 90-day extension.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Donna,
Yes.
Garrett? Carolyn,
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I'm okay with it as well. Okay, is there any other business? I don't see anything on the agenda. Nothing, right? Okay, and there's no members of the public left, I assume, who want to speak? Great,
There
okay,
are no public left.
okay.
Um,
Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion.
Second.
Gareth, how do you vote?
Yes, please.
Jim?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Thank you, everybody. It's been a long night.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Bye.
Good night.